Hello, friends, and let's get started.
Jason stood at the front door, car keys in his hand. He was looking impatiently at his watch when Melissa appeared in the hallway. She smiled with the corners of her lips, as if she knew she'd made him wait longer than usual. But as soon as she stepped out into the streetlight, he couldn't help but admire her. The short black dress that revealed her knees, her lean but slightly pumped legs from gym class, and the soft blonde curls she'd curl for the class reunion. Her makeup was brighter than he was used to seeing on her in everyday life. Dark arrows on her eyes, emphasizing her brown irises, and lipstick with a light sheen. "Wow," Jason said as she stopped beside him, adjusting the strap of her purse. "You look amazing." "Thank you, darling." Melissa smiled slyly. "Will you give me a ride?" He nodded, trying to smile back. But a strange uneasiness was growing inside with every passing moment. For one thing, he knew almost all of her high school friends, Carol, Vanessa, and Brooke. They were always the prom queens. There was no end to their parties. They liked to make noise, drink, and socialize with bright and free people. Second, one of their friends, Brooke, had recently gone through a high-profile divorce. Since then, she's been posting candid stories on social media. Pool parties, cocktails, men. All in all, not the most relaxed of environments, especially if you're sending your wife there in a rather short dress. Melissa noticed his look and added, "It's okay. It's not like I'm disappearing forever. It's just a bachelorette party to celebrate my graduation anniversary. 10 years, by the way." She raised her index finger up, as if giving a short lecture. "I don't mind," he replied, fumbling in his pocket for his car keychain. "It's just, I haven't seen you two together in a long time. You always have some kind of stoner thing going on. I'm afraid it's going to be too noisy." "So?" She squinted her eyes slyly. "Don't you trust me?" "Of course I do." He kissed her cheek. "Just be careful." They got in the car, and Jason turned the ignition key. While the engine was warming up, Melissa had already pulled out her phone. The girls' forever chat room was boiling with correspondence. "Carol, girls, we're going to have a high school blowout tonight. I've got tons of pictures and a couple hot stories." "Brooke, oh, let's do it. Even though I'm divorced, you know me, it's not going to be boring." "Vanessa, Mel, where are you? Tell your husband you're still a chorus girl, but not for long." Melissa looked at the screen and giggled softly. She was already anticipating the meeting. They had once been best friends, running behind the school stage, chatting in the back of desks, tossing notes about who liked who. 10 years had passed, and although they occasionally wrote back, the realities of adult life had taken their toll. Work, relationships, family. But today was an occasion to refresh their memories. The drive took about 20 minutes. Melissa was texting animatedly the whole time, and Jason kept glancing at her graceful legs. He was actually a little jealous, not his usual role. But what could he do? Melissa had dressed more modestly in the past, and he reassured himself that maybe once in a lifetime, she wanted to have fun too. When the car pulled up in front of Carol's luxurious country house, loud music and women's laughter were already coming from behind the closed doors. A bright chandelier illuminated the living room. Moving silhouettes could be seen behind the glass wall. "That's it," he sighed. "Be a good girl, please." "Of course." Melissa kissed him on the lips. "Thank you for bringing her." She got out of the car, and he caught a glimpse of his classmates waving to her as they waited at the door. Hearing the laughter and the cheerful voices, Jason shook his head and drove away, his heart feeling like it was clenched with slight anxiety. At that moment, Melissa breathed in the evening air with a full chest. The feeling of freedom, exhilaration, and adrenaline made her feel like she was in high school. She was that carefree girl again, surrounded by her best friends. Inside the house, music was blaring. In the living room, a spacious living room with cushioned couches and a glass coffee table, wine glasses were already clinking. Carol, the hostess of the evening, was wearing short shorts and a white t-shirt with bold lettering. Vanessa and Brooke shrieked with joy at the sight of Melissa and hugged her, nearly knocking over her punch glass. "Mel, finally," Vanessa squealed, taking Melissa under her arm. "I miss you so much." "Girls, it's been ages," Brooke added, gesturing with her champagne glass. "We should catch up." At first, everything was innocent. They sat down on the sofas, remembered their school pranks, and told each other about life. Some had careers in IT, others in the fashion industry. Carol bragged about the new house she and her husband had bought only 6 months ago. He had to go away for a couple of days on a business trip, she explained, winking. So we have the house all to ourselves. No one would say shoo, or ask, what are you wearing, or why are you drinking so much? Everyone cackled. Melissa grinned, remembering how Jason had also cautiously asked if her dress was too short. She'd joked that he just had an eye for the modest, not the girl who'd once competed with her friends for the most cocktails at the prom. Alcohol had played tricks on her back then, but the memories were still fun. The glasses changed to stronger drinks without her noticing. First wine, then rum and coke, and then tequila. Melissa didn't notice she was getting dizzy. She was laughing louder than usual, her face flaming, whether from the alcohol or the memories. Her friends amicably pulled out old photos, high school group shots, released to scrapbooks, with everyone in uniform, with ridiculous hairstyles. They poked their fingers around, remembering who was dating who back then. At one point, Brooke, who always liked to provoke, asked, "Listen, Mel, did you have any hobbies in high school?" She smirked wryly, leafing through the pictures. "Yeah, I remember her and Tommy from the baseball team hugging in the locker room." Vanessa chimed in, her eyes wide. "Oh, girls," Melissa giggled, sipping from her glass. "I was too shy back then. But yeah, I liked Tommy, although our kisses were so childish." "Well, you're not so shy now," Carol interjected with a wink. "You're a married woman with experience. And Jason's no stranger to the world. Are you happy with your marriage?" "Yeah, of course I am." Melissa instinctively adjusted the hem of her dress. "He's good. He's caring. He loves me." "That's all great," Brooke said. "But husbands are so monotonous, aren't they?" "You didn't think he was looking around too, did you?" Melissa frowned. A drunken head didn't take that kind of teasing well. But she didn't want to be confrontational, and the mood of the evening was largely defiant. "I don't think he is," she said softly. "He knows he has me." Puff. Brooke raised an eyebrow. "Any man looks around. Not now, but tomorrow. Not this way, that way. Look, don't tell me you're 100% sure he's faithful. I was married once too. I've seen these guys." Everyone was quiet for a moment. Brooke made herself look like an expert. She'd been through fire, water, and divorce. Melissa felt uncomfortable under that stare. But just a second later, Carol tried to smooth over the pause. "Okay, let's not talk about the sad stuff. Guys, let's do something fun. I called a couple guys I know. Don't worry, they're cool, no compromises. It'll be just like when we were young." "Really?" Melissa's eyes bulged. "You invited guys to our reunion? Why?" "To keep things fun." Carol stuck out her tongue like a baby and leaned over to Melissa. "Trust me, after a couple of drinks, you'll be happy to dance with someone new. This isn't high school, it's adult life. No one's forbidding you from having fun. And no one's going to say, shame on you," Vanessa said with a laugh. "Now, on the contrary, if you're all modest, you'll be ridiculed." Melissa flinched a little, but the feeling of drunken merriment kept her from turning her mind on. Somewhere inside, the thought flared up, why would I want to do all this? I'm married. I'm not 17 anymore. However, the pressure from her friends and the desire to keep up prevailed. She stayed. The atmosphere was too cheerful. The music was getting louder and louder, and her head was spinning from alcohol and memories. An hour or so passed. Melissa didn't realize exactly how long. The doorbell rang. Carol ran to open it, and a group of 2 guys tall, in jeans and white t-shirts, poured into the living room. Their names were Alex and Rick. Both, at first glance, were typical party people. Big smiles, firm handshakes, casual jokes. They brought with them a bottle of whiskey and some energy drinks. "Girls, meet Alex and Rick." Carol's voice is louder than the music. "My acquaintances from the fitness center." The guys walked in and looked around at the entire female group. Alex, who was a little taller and more athletic looking, immediately fixed his gaze on Melissa. She was embarrassed and pretended to fix her hair to hide her excitement. He smiled at her, and in his eyes he said, "Let's see who's beautiful." The atmosphere began to change before my eyes. The girls had already had a lot to drink, and now, with the appearance of the guys, it was as if a second wave of fun had opened up. Carol pulled out the speakers and put on a dance track. Vanessa and Brooke started dancing in the center of the room, swaying their hips to the beat. Alex and Rick sat on the couch, cracking open a bottle of whiskey and pouring it into shot glasses. "What's the celebration?" Rick asked, looking at the smiling friends. "A reunion," Carol answered. "Try to outshout the music. It's been 10 years, you know, and we're just refreshing our impressions." "Great." Alex shifted his gaze to Melissa, who was sitting next to him, feeling her heart start to beat faster. "And how do you like being back with these people again? Is it cozy?" Melissa didn't immediately find something to answer. She felt as if her thoughts were scattering apart. She thought it was strange that this strange man was looking at her so directly. There didn't seem to be any aggression in him, just confidence and interest. "He seemed fine," she shrugged. "We were friends in high school." "Friends?" he asked with a slight squint. "What about now?" "Now we just see each other sometimes. I'm married," she added casually, "to put some distance between us." "That's right." Alex nodded, clearly not embarrassed. "I hope your husband doesn't mind that you're having fun." "No," she exhaled. "We're just drinking, socializing. It's normal." He smiled, and Melissa noticed the pleasant features in his face, the narrow cheekbones, the slightly upturned nose, the neatly trimmed beard. Before she could look away, Vanessa pulled her to the center of the room. "Mel, come join us. Let's dance." The music got louder, the rhythm started, and she followed Vanessa, hoping to wake up her mind with dancing. Alex got up, too, and came closer. At one point, he offered her his arm to twirl her around him, as in a slow dance. She laughed a little at the awkwardness, but didn't recoil. The whiskey was pounding mercilessly in her head, and her pulse seemed ready to jump out of her chest. "Wow," she murmured when he touched her waist. "You've worked me over pretty fast, and I like pretty things," he replied briefly, looking into her eyes. After a few minutes, the tempo of the music changed to a smoother track. The lights in the living room were dimmed and colored lamps were turned on. Carol clearly wanted to create a club atmosphere. Rick pulled Brooke to him, and they began kissing in front of the others. Vanessa laughed approvingly. Melissa felt that it was too explicit, but immediately a thought flashed through her mind. Why not? After all, we're not high school girls anymore. Inside, there was an argument between wanting to reprimand herself, "You have a husband," and feeling like she was missing out on something in life. The relationship with Jason had been good, but predictable. And now, under the influence of alcohol, she felt strangely intoxicated with freedom. "Hey, Mel." Vanessa leaned toward her, almost pressing her lips to his ear. "Well, you're right as always. Relax, it's a game. We're not in a convent, and you're not a nun." Melissa felt a fire in her chest. She knew she had to leave, but for some reason she couldn't. Alex, seeing her confusion, quietly ran his palm along her back, leaning down to her neck. "You're the most beautiful one here," he whispered. The words sounded strangely intimate. Melissa's heart raced in response, as if she were about to do something unlawful. But she didn't want to resist that wave. Suddenly, Vanessa clapped her hands together. "Okay, we all need some hot music." She pressed something on her phone, and a sensual track with an intense beat played. Brooke took Rick into one of the bedrooms, laughing and nagging. "Come on, let's go show you the vintage record collection." And even though everyone realized they weren't going to see any records, no one saw fit to stop them. On the contrary, Carol whistled and applauded loudly, cheering them on. At such moments, social barriers no longer worked. Alcohol and their own recklessness were unleashed. The atmosphere had heated up to the limit. Only Melissa, Alex and Vanessa, and Carol were left in the living room. They had suddenly gone to the kitchen under the pretext of making new cocktails, or maybe not so much an excuse. Most likely, they just gave Melissa and Alex a chance to be alone. Melissa remained, standing near the couch. Alex didn't hurry to move away either, standing beside her, looking at her as if assessing her mood. Flooded with soft-colored light, he looked more confident than any man she knew. There was calmness in his posture and desire in his gaze. But there was no aggression. Rather, he was just waiting. Melissa looked up suddenly, and for a few seconds they met gazes in silence. Something in her chest clenched sharply. The contradiction between, "You have a husband, go home," and "let yourself go out of bounds for once." She exhaled heavily and stood up, about to head toward the kitchen to get Vanessa and Carol. But at that moment, Alex gently touched her hand. You want to, but you're afraid. I won't hold you, he said in a low voice, almost inaudible against the music. Some line burst inside her. Maybe it was the atmosphere. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the strange desire to prove to herself that she wasn't such an easy wife. She turned around abruptly, lifted her face to his, and, looking into his eyes, pressed her lips to his. This kiss was almost aggressive, but Alex responded with softness. His palms slid down her back, touching the hot skin under her dress. Scraps of thoughts sounded in her head. Jason, I'm married. What am I doing? It's despicable. But it was echoed by others. Just this once, they won't tell anyone. And anyway. And those second thoughts were winning now. When she pulled away from his lips, Alex exhaled softly. Shall we go? She only nodded, feeling her knees buckling and her heart thundering in her ears. He took her hand, leading her down the hallway to one of the spare bedrooms. The door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the music and laughter, though the same rhythms and muffled voices could still be heard somewhere in the distance. A soft bedside lamp burned in the room, coloring everything in a warm, muted light. He was closer than she thought and reached up to kiss her lips again. Melissa responded, no longer hesitating. His lips were hot, his breathing confused. She felt his hands sliding around her waist, moving higher. Gradually, she felt herself losing her footing, reaching for him, groping his shoulders. Her heart pounded as if ready to pound through her chest. I'm married, she whispered suddenly, as if trying to remind herself and him. I know, he answered softly, squeezing her palm lightly. But it doesn't matter now, does it? Her whole body responded to those words with a piercing excitement. She realized that she was crossing a line beyond which there would be no excuses. It was impossible to say it was a mistake later. That would be something else. But in her condition, these thoughts only served to inflame the passion even more. She thought that for a moment she would feel like a stranger's wife, who was not limited by any conventions. Perhaps tomorrow it would be regretted. But now, and she let herself snap, let her skin burn with his kisses, felt the convulsive movements of her own hands clinging to his shoulders. They collapsed on the bed together, and the smell of her perfume mingled with the scent of the man's cologne. Everything felt so vivid, so acute. She had forgotten everything. In her head flashed phrases of her friends. Well, you know, all husbands look around. You will not enjoy life. Remain a gray mouse. She was pushing herself to this crazy step. And now, when Alex touched her the way no one had touched her for a long time, her body was burning. It was as if time had sped up. She heard only her own moans, quiet requests, wait, wait, and immediately continue. Their breaths merged into one frenzied rhythm, their hands sliding, sometimes frantically reaching for the sheet to get some grip on reality. The scene was filled with passion and inner conflict at the same time. Every moment brought a flash of pleasure, but it also pricked her conscience. A hot tear ran down her cheek from the acute feeling that it was all wrong, that she was betraying her husband. But the desire seemed to overpower the moral torment, and the alcohol only added fuel to the fire. The moment seemed like an eternity, and when it was over, she felt devastated. Alex lay beside her, still breathing heavily, closed his eyes, and Melissa lay there, listening to the beat of her own heart, which was trying to bring her back to sober thought. There were still echoes of music outside the door, but it seemed distant, as if from a parallel reality. Morning came suddenly to Melissa. A strange bed, strange linens. She jumped up, trying to get her bearings. The room was in semi-darkness because of the thick curtains, but the sunlight still made its way through the cracks, golden streaks laying on the floor. Alex wasn't in the room. Only scattered clothes, crumpled sheets, a heavy head, and an aching throat from a dry mouth. She groaned softly, feeling hungover. Her head was cracking in a way that even closing her eyes didn't help. She wanted water, silence, and to disappear away from reality. Oh my God, my mind raced. What have I done? She slowly lowered her feet to the floor, searching for her clothes she'd come in yesterday. Her dress was lying under the bed. She found her panties by the bed, her bra on the chair. All of this told her more than any photograph could. Every item scattered around the room reminded her of what she had done. Self-disgust, and at the same time, a certain wave of despair came alive in her soul. She got up and walked out into the hallway, trying not to make any noise. Through the loose door to the living room, she saw Carol and Vanessa sitting at the table with coffee. When they saw her, they looked at each other and continued their conversation as if no one had gone to the boyfriend's house for the night. The house was too quiet, with only the light whine of the ventilation system filling the silence. "Oh, Mel's awake," Carol said, taking a sip of coffee. "Good morning." "Morning," Melissa said uncertainly, feeling as if she'd been caught in the act. "Everything okay? What could possibly be wrong?" Vanessa pretended not to get the hint. "We're just here relaxing after the party." "How was your night, by the way?" She wanted to fall through the floor. Her friends hadn't seen the whole scene, or pretended not to, but their smiles made it clear. Brooke was asleep in another room somewhere, and Alex and Rick were nowhere to be seen. "I'm fine," Melissa replied with a stone face. Where did everyone go?" "The guys left a couple hours ago," Carol said. "Alex said he had something to do. Took Rick and took off." "I see," Melissa mumbled. She didn't feel comfortable staying here a second longer. She wanted to go home, though the thought of seeing Jason immediately made her panic. She couldn't imagine looking him in the eye. "Well, I hope you had a magical night," Vanessa said with a slight sneer. "At least, judging by the way you were smiling when you left with Alex." "Enough," Melissa cut her off, trying to keep her composure. "I'm actually on my way out. Thank you, everyone." She went to the bathroom and rinsed her face, feeling the unpleasant taste and itch in her throat. Even the cold water didn't completely refresh her. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, smudged makeup, reddened eyes. "Who am I now?" she asked silently. She felt nauseous, not only from the alcohol, but also from the feeling of her own filth. After a few minutes, she came out of the bathroom, quickly grabbed her purse without even eating breakfast, and headed for the exit. Carol shouted after her, "Hey, where are you going? Why don't we go somewhere together? Go to a coffee shop." But Melissa was out of earshot. She needed to be alone with her thoughts. Jason was awake. He was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee when Melissa finally entered the house. She tried to open the door as quietly as she could, but immediately saw his figure at the table. He looked up, a mixture of relief and concern in his eyes. "Hello," he said softly. "I thought I'd wait for you. It's 9 in the morning, and you don't usually stay up late. Is everything okay?" Melissa automatically fixed her hair, trying to hide the smudged makeup. Excitement overwhelmed her to the point of shaking in her knees. She'd never felt so guilty, but now she had to feign some confidence. "It's okay," she answered quietly, trying not to look him in the eye. "We were celebrating, yes. I stayed the night at Carol's. We had a lot to drink, and I have a headache tonight." "Understand," he sighed, pausing. "Do you want some coffee?" "Yeah, I guess so." She walked past him, heading for the bathroom. He glanced down at her feet, noticing the scrape on her ankle and the scuffed heel of her shoes. He was suspicious because she was usually so careful with her shoes, and this was such a mess. "Hey," he called when she was almost out the door. "Are you still wearing your makeup from last night?" "Yeah," she mumbled. "The party had been too exhausting. I'm going to take a shower now, okay?" He nodded, and she disappeared into the bathroom. His gaze was long and hard. He noticed too many details. The way her hand trembled, the way she avoided talking about the details of the party. He really didn't like it. The way she was dressed, and the thought of her rowdy friends, made his anxiety grow almost panicky. But Jason decided to hold off on the conversation for now. In the bathroom, Melissa turned on the hot water and stood under the shower for a long time, trying to wash away the guilt. But it stung her more than any streams of water. She remembered Alex's hands, his whispers. The words "I know" echoed in her ears. And the image of Jason, the one who carefully made her breakfast in the morning, who cared, who believed in her. She shook with self-disgust. When she came out, Jason was still sitting in the kitchen, arms crossed over his chest. His cup was gone, but he kept swirling it as if he were nervous. She walked to her bedroom, hid her laundry, tried to put away the things that smelled like someone else's cologne before he noticed. Then, putting on her house clothes, she returned to him. He looked at her carefully, nodded at her shoes, which she set by the door. The heel is scraped. Did you fall? He asked. No, just rubbed it. She turned away quickly. Carol's stories are funny, Jason said suddenly, narrowing his eyes a little. I've seen them. It's just Vanessa and Carol for some reason. I saw that it was just the two of them. I don't see you in there. How come? Melissa shrugged tensely. She didn't know what to say. Run away? Make up a lie? But she was too exhausted to lie in detail. Maybe I'd already gone to bed when they were filming, she muttered. Uh-huh. He looked at the empty cup, lingering his gaze on it. Okay, get some rest. His voice sounded so cold that she flinched. The doubts in him were building up, and the uneasiness in her was growing. But she hesitated to have a frank conversation, not now, not when the remnants of a hangover were buzzing in her head. A few days passed. Everything seemed to be back on track, though Melissa sensed that her marriage had hit a turbulent zone. Jason was withdrawn, talking very little. Sometimes she noticed him typing something on his phone, and when he saw her, he hurriedly put it away. But he didn't ask questions directly, and she hoped that her strange blunder would remain a secret. She came home from work one evening and found Jason at home in complete silence. He was holding his cell phone in his hand and staring at the screen as if he'd just seen a ghost. At her appearance, he looked up, and the look almost made her heart skip a beat. There was obvious pain, anger, and contempt there. Did something happen? She asked slowly. He silently reached for her phone, which was on the table, and opened the messenger on it. Melissa realized she'd forgotten to lock the screen. And then a notification came to her attention, a picture in some anonymous account. It was of her and Alex in an embrace. The picture had been taken, apparently, as he led her by the hand toward the bedroom. Someone had taken it secretly. She began, unable to find the words. You should watch this. Jason handed her his phone. There was a short video on the screen. The quality isn't the best, but the faces are clearly visible. She's kissing Alex. The camera pans up and down, but you can clearly see them pressed against each other. And she's clearly wearing that very short dress. Melissa didn't even realize someone was filming her. Maybe it was a bad joke by one of her friends, or maybe a random bystander. But it didn't matter at this point. Jason, she breathed out, feeling her knees go wobbly. It's not what you think. He looked at her like he was seeing a stranger. There was an icy glint in his pupils. The silence seemed endless. Is there something you want to say? She broke the silence at last. No, he answered coldly. I have nothing to say. It's all been said with these images. She made a timid attempt to touch his hand, but he pulled away. There was a wall between them that couldn't be ignored. Melissa felt a shiver creep under her skin, mixed with an all-consuming dread. She was going to lose him. He would never forgive such an open betrayal. Please believe me, she began, dabbing away tears. I was driven. I was drunk. It was a one-time thing. I don't know how it happened. Jason averted his eyes, but the way his lips quivered made it clear that he was in pain. He stood up, walked across the room, grabbed his car keys, then tossed them on the nightstand. He turned to her again, frowning, surrendered. I don't even know what to feel right now. Anger or disgust. She wanted to say something, but no sound came out her throat. Melissa woke up the next day with a heavy feeling. Jason wasn't home. He'd left at dawn without saying anything. He'd returned in the evening, but he'd gone straight to the bedroom and spent a long time packing his suitcase. She approached him, desperation in her eyes. Jason, please listen to me. He didn't answer, just continued folding his shirts. Then she tearfully grabbed his hand. It was one time. I'm so ashamed. Believe me, I didn't mean it. It was just a lot of alcohol. My friends encouraged me. Brooke said all husbands cheat. I was angry, confused. He pulled his hand out, looked at her with painful sadness. You didn't mean to, but you did. And now I don't want to live with a woman who only needs a couple of drinks and other people's words to forget who she is. His voice was quiet, almost emotionless, but there was determination in those words. She realized she was losing him for good. It was starting to rain outside the window, the drops thumping loudly on the sill as if echoing her sobs. Please, she whispered. I know it was my fault, that I shouldn't have crossed that line. We were a family. Give me a chance. He closed the suitcase, zipped it up, and looked up at her with a hard stare. Family? How am I supposed to trust you now? How can I look my own wife in the eye, knowing that she could have gone to bed with the first man your girlfriends literally planted on her? Do you really think I can forget that image? He exhaled convulsively. Let me walk away, Melissa. She took a step back, at a loss for words. He picked up his suitcase, glanced at the pictures of them together that still stood on the dresser in the living room. The happy trips to the ocean, the wedding, the romantic dinner. All those moments now seemed like a fake mirage to him. After a few seconds, he headed for the door. At the threshold, he lingered, turned around, said, I hope your childhood friends helped you open your eyes to life. And they opened my eyes to you. Then he walked out, slamming the door behind him. Melissa broke down into silent sobs. Her chest tightened. She sank to the floor, pulled her knees to her chest, and sat staring at the wall for a long time. It seemed to her that this was a dream, a terrible reverie from which she was about to awaken. But this was reality. She had destroyed her marriage with one evening of nostalgic partying. Now how to move on with her life. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Somewhere on her phone, the notifications of the girls' forever chat room were beeping. Her friends were discussing something again. Now the messages seemed alien and meaningless. She suddenly realized that all those school memories and undying friendships had crumbled to dust as soon as her life was shattered by the reality of cheating. She remembered the moment she'd seen them in the living room that morning, those sneers, the leering glances. Some part of her wished she could hate them. But somewhere deep inside, she realized that the decision to accept Alex's advances was her own. No one had pushed her forcibly. There had been hints, encouragement, and alcohol, but the choice was her own. The party's over, she thought, looking at the door Jason had just disappeared behind. And with it, my family is over. She looked down at her hands, which were shaking, and then hid her face in her palms. She had a long road ahead of her to explain to herself why she'd crossed the line. But she knew now that the past would not return. At that moment, the house was deafeningly quiet. No music, no laughter of her friends, no his voice. Only the ticking of the wall clock and the swaying of the curtains in the draft. And that sound grew more and more droning, pressing on her heart, until Melissa realized she was all alone. So ended their story, which had begun with a fun party, warm memories, and alcoholic conversations. And perhaps the most important thing Melissa had learned was that sometimes one single night can turn a life upside down, cast a shadow on the brightest things, and destroy what seemed unbreakable. No childhood friendship can make up for the loss of a loved one's trust. And no relax, it's just a game, can undo the consequences of choices made in a drunken impulse. She had crossed a line beyond which there was no turning back. And all she could do was pick up the pieces of her old life, trying to figure out who she was now and whether she would ever be able to forgive herself. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.